Our next speaker before lunch is Dharmesh Shah. Many of you will know him from his awesome blog on startups.com, which now has a Q&A section called answers.onstartups.com, which is a part of the Stack Exchange network, so it's all one big, beautiful, overlapping thing. He's the co-founder and CTO, I think, of HubSpot, which he told me where he manages nobody, yes, but provides a great deal of leadership. And this is, I think, his third company. So please welcome Dharmesh Shah.
All right. How's everybody doing? You holding up? So you just got done watching Seth and David, who are both exceptional speakers, very organized, have this cohesive train of thought. They have a message. They have structure. I have none of those things. So I'm a hacker by trade. By the way, who's heard me speak before at a business of software conference? Watch the video. OK, a bunch of you. I've gotten a little bit better, but not very different. The material's all different, by the way. I'll try and speak a little bit slower. Well, actually, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to talk about building software businesses. And I put this disclaimer up every time I speak, which is I write code every night. I'm a hacker. I don't speak professionally for a living. So be gentle. If you have questions, by the way, along the way, feel free to ask them. One of the upsides to me not having like a consistent train of thought is that you can't interrupt it. So like just raise your hand and try and get my attention, jump up and down or something. If you want, just double click on one of the slides and we can dive in. I picked things out of the last year's worth of experience based on what I thought would be interesting and that's non-obvious. At least it was non-obvious to me over the course of the last year. So new material. Looking back, just one quick thing, two quick things. So last year I launched my book about marketing, and you guys helped propel it. It did really well. It's still doing very well. Number 7 out of, not that I'm counting how many marketing books. I actually wrote a script that does that and tracks my rankings hourly, so I don't have to do it myself. But anyways, thank you for all of you that bought it. And I'm expecting my first child in January. My new startup venture. Hopefully it will require less capital. As Joel mentioned, I write a blog. Lots of you read it, I think. And HubSpot is the company. This is my third startup. And a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about actually comes out of HubSpot for a couple of reasons. We didn't invent the stuff. And one of the dangers of speaking and talking about software businesses and startups generally is most people, including me, extrapolate from a data point of 1. Which is, oh yeah, well, this is how it worked, and boy, isn't that great. And I'll share with you that data point of 1 in terms of stuff that worked for us. But at least it's better than extrapolating from a data point of 0, right? So we've actually tried this stuff, and we kind of know what has worked for us or not, and use what works for you. I put this slide up here, to brag. This is the customer growth chart. And if you notice, like back in 2007, you were kind of flattish, just getting started. That's when I first spoke at Business of Software. This is my 3rd year in a row. And clearly, my presence at Business of Software is doing really well for the business. So hope to get invited back. And this is customer growth, by the way. The revenue growth ramp is steeper because the revenue per customer is growing, and we'll talk about that as far as metrics. I don't want to talk about HubSpot, the company, and what we sell, because I'm not a salesperson. I don't sell things. We're going to talk about the business. One thing that's interesting about HubSpot is of the first 9 people on the exec team, all of which are still there, or still here somewhere, they're MBAs, including me, including my co-founder, including our VP of engineering, including our VP of sales, all the way on through. And so one would think that we were like doomed to failure from the beginning with that many MBAs sitting in a single startup. And we've managed so far not to screw it up, and we'll talk about that. All right, and as I mentioned, all this stuff does not come from us. HubSpot, one of the things I love about working at the company, one of the things I love about the team, is we're students of the game. So we know we haven't quite got it figured out. We know there's going to be plenty of opportunity to screw it up, so we like to talk to as many smart people that will give us the time. These are just some of them. There are lots of smart companies in the world. These are folks that I've actually consumed copious amounts of alcohol with or sat for multiple hours. And gotten a chance to tap their brain. And I'll talk about Drew from Dropbox because he's the one I consumed alcohol with most recently and was influential. So, by the way, how many people use Dropbox? I'm just curious. It's great. So one of the things that's interesting to me, and this is one of the things that really appeals to me, this is my favorite conference, I've said that publicly many, many times, is because it's about the software business. And the operative word there being both software, obviously, and the fact that it's a business, that we are trying to build businesses, not do interesting projects, these are businesses. And it's okay to talk about revenues and profits and margins and customers and product and those kinds of things as a business. So I'm going to spend a very brief amount of time because I get this question every now and then about venture capital. So HubSpot has raised $33 million of venture capital in our last 4 years. And it's my first company raising venture capital. I've been a self-funded, bootstrapped startup entrepreneur and blogged a ton about why you shouldn't raise venture capital. Not because it's evil, which I don't think it is, but I don't think it's necessary for most of you. So if you're a first-time entrepreneur, I'm going to leave this message, and we can definitely chat about it over a beer tonight or something like that in terms of when's the time to raise it or not raise it. But the key here is that it's not necessary. Like, too many entrepreneurs get started. It's like, I'm building this software business. Here's what I want to do. And the first thing I'm going to go do is write a business plan or a PowerPoint deck or do something and then go off and try and raise capital. That's a mistake. Because as soon as you try and do that, you shift your mode from solving a customer's problem or an industry's problem into solving the investor's problem. And those are not the same problem. Investors have a very different set of problems that they're trying to solve. So if you can avoid it, don't raise capital too early on, especially if you're a first-time entrepreneur. We can talk about an hour for just that. And whatever capital you raise, make sure it fits. There's a reason why HubSpot, we like to believe, and it's, I've gotten really good at the rationalization now because I've told the story enough times. But there's a reason we've raised it. So quick question for you guys. How much money do you think? So we looked at all the publicly traded software as a service businesses. So Constant Contact, LogMeIn, SuccessFactors, NetSuite, all of them. These are software businesses, hosted software, multi-tenant, doing smart things. They went public, so they're obviously relatively successful, had an exit. And you would think, so like back in the day, I would have thought, okay, well, why does a software business, like when I first when I did HubSpot, it's like, okay, well, we raised $1 million of angel capital. And I'm like, my God, I have no idea how we're going to spend $1 million of capital because it's just the two of us. Why does software require that much? It's like, okay, well, that's great. We'll just make this last 2 years, and we'll see if the business goes. Then we raised another 5, another 12, and then all the way up onto 33. And the reason is, for those of you that are in the SaaS business, this is actually relatively interesting, is that it takes a fair amount of capital. The answer, by the way, is $42 million median raise pre-IPO. If you look at not average, the median, across all the publicly traded SaaS companies. So all these SaaS companies raised a ton of money. And the reason is, and the question is, well, why would they do that? And the answer is because it takes, for a SaaS company specifically, software as a service where you have a subscription-based model, it takes a fair amount of capital to acquire customers. And the faster you're growing, so the ones that raised the most in terms of, and the fastest was Salesforce.com. And their growth curve is steeper than HubSpot's. It's actually the only publicly traded company that's steeper than HubSpot's, which I'm proud of. But so it takes money to kind of grow these SaaS businesses because, and this is very simple, it took me a couple of years, despite an MBA, to figure this out, which is when you're doing a subscription-based model, you're incurring all your acquisition costs to get the customer, sales and marketing and everything, up front. And then they pay you over time, usually on a monthly basis. Even if it's on an annual basis, usually your lifespan for a customer should be, let's say, 4 to 5 years is the expected lifespan of a SaaS customer if you're doing things right. So the reality is you spend all the money up front, and then the revenue comes in over time. So essentially what you're doing as a SaaS company is a form of customer financing. And oddly, the faster you're growing, the more customers you're signing up, the more capital you will consume, fueling that growth. So that's one non-obvious thing that kind of occurred to us along the way. There's a investment firm out on the West Coast called Pacific Crest that did some research that says, okay, across, I think it's about 78 privately held software companies, how much money did it take to get to specific points of growth? And then how much money do they expect to take before they got to cash flow break even, essentially? And this is, once again, extrapolating from a data point, it's about right-ish. So if some of you, I mean, I'm sure lots of you have gotten to like better levels of revenue without raising this kind of money, but this feels about right as a rule of thumb. It's a great report, by the way. We can talk more about other numbers from that. So I'm going to set the tone for some of the things that, by the way, it takes me like 10 minutes to get warmed up, so I put a lot of the fluffy stuff up front, and then I can dig deeper into it. So I'm going to go through just some very, very basic metrics. Some of this stuff you guys know or you've heard from me, so I'm going to be very quick about it, but it sets the model for some of the things I want to talk about. One is your cost of customer acquisition. And this is your total marketing, which is sales and marketing dollars, divided by the number of customers you sold. So let's say you spent $50,000 on sales, and this is all in, right? So it's the salesperson's salaries, marketing people's salaries, and marketing programs, all advertising, AdWords, everything, the website, all of it, divided by the number of customers sold, right? So let's say you spent $50,000 and you got 1,000 customers, your acquisition cost was $50. So that's an important number to know in terms of what does it cost you to acquire a customer. Another important number, which we'll talk about, is the overall sales velocity. How many new customers are you selling month over month? And how's that trending? What's the second derivative on that? How's the growth going? And things like that. So we'll talk about that in terms of the way it plays in. The other number we need to know is the lifetime value of a customer. The ARPU stands for the average revenue per user. So essentially, it's how much money do you make per customer? Let's say we're just talking about monthly businesses. It applies equally well if you're talking annually. So let's say you're charging $100 a month, and your average customer stays 50 months. Right, so you're going to get the 50 months worth of customer times the $100 of revenue, which equates to $5,000. Is that right? Yeah. So that lifetime value is important, and the obvious one, which we're not going to get into, is that your lifetime value should exceed your cost of customer acquisition. Right, so if like the total money you will ever make on a customer does not exceed the amount of money it took you to get that customer, something is fundamentally wrong. Right, so that. All right, so that one's obvious. So now let's get to the non-obvious stuff. So one is the retention rate. So if you look at what causes a customer to have a lifetime value of X, there's two factors that go into it. How much money do you charge them per month or per whatever period, and how long do they stay? The how long do they stay part of the equation is around your retention rate. Of the customers that sign up, how often do they cancel? What's the cancellation rate or the churn rate? And this one's actually kind of subtle because different people measure retention rates in different ways. So one way you can measure your retention rate, or the inverse of which is the churn rate, the cancellation rate, and we'll talk about churn rates because it's a little bit simpler. Let's say your churn rate is 3%. That means if you started your month with 100 customers, of those 100 customers, 3 of them will cancel on average, right? That's a customer cancellation rate. Another way to measure it is revenue cancellation rate, because different customers might pay you different amounts of money. So you might have, going into it, 100 customers, and the number of ones that cancel are the ones that were paying you the most, let's say, in which case your cancellation rate's higher than 3%, even though 3% of your customers canceled. So on a revenue basis, your churn rate might be higher. And the last but very important piece is what we're calling now, lots of people are, it's called discretionary churn. And discretionary churn essentially is the customers that cancel that actually had an option to cancel in the first place. So let's say you go into that month with 100 customers, but only 80 of them actually had the opportunity to cancel because some of them are in 6-month contracts or 12-month contracts or whatever. So just the fact that you kept some of those, you shouldn't get real credit for because they didn't have the option to leave. They didn't have the option to walk out the door. So the discretionary churn is really what you should be watching maniacally because that's the signal that tells you, are you doing something useful? Are people valuing it? Are they relatively happy or not? So those are numbers that are extremely good to know. And one of the non-obvious things we learned at HubSpot is the absence of churn or the absence of cancellation is not the same as the presence of delightedness. So even if they had the option to cancel, they could have hit that discretionary cancel button. I am out the door. This stuff sucks. Just because they didn't do it, it means they're continuing to pay you, which is great. But it does not necessarily mean they're delighted or they're happy. And your long-term success, low churn rates are absolutely important, but you need happy customers. Otherwise, life gets really hard very quickly. Because the happy customers are the ones that you get kind of referenced, and you get word of mouth, and I'm not going to talk about marketing, but it's extremely important. So you should be measuring that stuff in terms of everything from, let's say you could do classic customer sat surveys, you could do Net Promoter Score, which is a simple 2-question survey. You could put something in the product like Wufoo does and say, are you happy? Like question mark right inside the product, and people can tell you, yes, I am happy, no, I am not happy, and measure that just to kind of get a sense for, just because they're using the product and they're in there doesn't necessarily mean they're happy. All right, everybody with me so far? All right. So one of the things that was fascinating at HubSpot is that all these little tensions that exist within the company. We're 180 people now. We've grown really, really fast. I think it was about 100 last time I spoke here. And I'm going to talk about one of them. But there's all these little conflicting forces where you pull on something and something else gives. So we're going to look at the 3 primary things we just talked about. Sales velocity. How many customers are you selling every month? your acquisition costs on a per customer basis, and the lifetime value. So let's say right now, hypothetically, and I'm going to posit to you that in most cases, if you try and prove one, something else is going to suffer, all other things being relatively equal. So for instance, let's say we came in and said, you know what, we're not selling enough customers. We want to drive sales velocity up. And we've done this at HubSpot. We do all sorts of crazy things at HubSpot. And so we can go to the sales team and say, oh, by the way, we are going to increase quota and goals by X%. Let's try that. Let's see what happens. And it works. As it turns out, it does work. But multiple bad things can happen. So let's say we do that. We say, OK, we're going to sell 10% more. And let's say we want to keep the acquisition cost the same, that we're not going to spend any more for leads. We're not going to get any more better prospects in the door, better leads in the door. What will happen, invariably, is the lifetime value will go down because you will sign unhappy customers. You will. Because the salespeople said, oh, I've got to sell more. They're going to be more aggressive. They're going to do more arm twisting. And essentially, you're going to get less happy customers as an outcome of that process. So we can take any combination of these variables and say, oh, we're going to hold this constant. And let's say, for instance, in that same example, we want to grow sales velocity, but we also want to keep the same number of happy customers. We want to leave lifetime value the same. We don't want to degenerate that. What happens then, the way you get solved in the organization, is your acquisition costs go up. Because what happens, like salespeople, it's like, oh, we need more growth. That means we need more leads coming into the top of the funnel so we can cherry pick and sell the best customers. If you want to have happy customers, just give me 500 people to talk to instead of 400 people to talk to, and then I can sell more, essentially. Well, the reality is those additional leads are going to cost you money, so your acquisition cost goes up. So the moral of the story here is that in most cases, if you're not very, very careful, we're going to talk about that, is you will pull on something in the system. There's this great big system dynamics thing where you turn this knob or dial over here, and something semi-unexpected happens somewhere else. And so the trick is, A, finding that balance. And the balance is very tricky. And there's all these little mini subsystems within there. So this is just a sales marketing versus customer happiness versus acquisition cost. But we can take any 2 or 3 variables within the company, and what we found is that they're interrelated somehow. It's like there's some way we do something over here and something else happens over there. So you might be asking yourself, well, self, what do we do? Like, how do we, like, I want to improve sales, and I want happier customers, and we want to drive our acquisition costs down. And the cliched but right answer is invest in not just the product, invest in the experience. And there's a very good reason for this, and it's semi-obvious, which is if you invest in the experience, everybody wins. It's easier for the salespeople to sell. It's a better product. It's a better experience. Customers are happier. Your lifetime value stays constant or goes up, right, because they're going to stay longer because the experience is better. And your acquisition costs go down. So that's the easy thing, right? I'm going to step back. We have 60 sales reps at HubSpot, 60 salespeople at HubSpot out of 180. Very sales and marketing driven organization. That's partly what's fueled that growth. So we woke up earlier, about a month and a half ago, and we did a number of things. We did some surveys, and we did some soul searching, and we said, well, this kind of sucks. And it sucks because not that we're not selling, not that we have, we like our salespeople, they're just fine. The issue is that we didn't believe that the path that we were headed on, we want to build a multi-billion-dollar business. The path that we're headed down was going to create a $250 million business, a $500 million, not something exceptional that our grandkids are going to talk about someday. So we made a radical change. Like up until last month, HubSpot would hire 3 new sales reps a month to drive the sales velocity, drive the sales growth, which required marketing spend to drive more leads in. We produce content. It's all mostly inbound marketing. And we put that to 0. And we said we're not going to grow sales and marketing anymore, period. And we're going to take all the cash we would have spent on sales and marketing, and we're going to pour it into product and into experience. And we think that's the right thing to do. And we had to convince 60-person sales team that, by the way, we're not growing sales, marketing. We're not going to grow marketing. The company, the board, the investors, a bunch of people that we're going to take a hit next year in terms of revenue projection. So our revenues, well, if you ask me, they'll answer, but otherwise I'm not. All right, so the idea is invest in the product because it works, because it's the one thing that essentially you don't get those trade-offs in terms of other things in the system breaking. The other thing that was not obvious to us that we learned was there's a difference between making customers happy and making happy customers. So the making customers happy, so if I got up and I had a company meeting relatively recently, like a week ago, wow, feels like a lifetime ago, where we announced some of this new news. It's like, oh, here's what we're doing. We're not going to invest in sales and marketing. And what I said was, we don't want to focus on making customers happy. Because what that connotates when I say make customers happy is like, OK, well, sales and marketing does this over here. And then some number of customers show up. We have 3,200 of them now. And then it's product and engineering and support and all those folks that are then responsible, quote unquote, for making the customers that we have happy. That is not the right answer. The right answer is the entire purpose of the business. The entire purpose of the business is to produce happy customers. That's the output. This is not something you do after the fact and say, oh, we've got these customers. Now what do we do to make them happy and keep them happy, and we invest in product? It starts from first exposure, starts from marketing, all the way on through sales and everything. And so everybody in the company needs to be thinking about, is what I am doing contributing to the raw output, the raw goal of the company, which is to manufacture happy customers. Don't think about customer happiness as a kind of subsequent thing that product and support worry about. Everybody should be thinking about producing happy customers. This I've talked about. I'm going to talk about a little bit more because of all the things that we've done at HubSpot, and we have a bunch of these little business hacks, like little tricky little things that we do that we look back on and say, wow, that was kind of smart of us. That was clever. This is on our top 5 list, and it's on our top 5. And I ask people, it's like, oh, yeah, well, what do you think worked at HubSpot that you thought was particularly clever or brilliant? And all modesty aside, they came back with this. And so what this is, we have a number at HubSpot called the Customer Happiness Index, called Chi. And we've had it since month 3. So it's been a long time that we came up with this relatively early on. And it's a geeky way to measure how happy customers are. And it's a number from 0 to 100 that measures the probability that any given customer, given the option to cancel, will still be a customer next month. So we can go through, and we do, go through all 3,200 customers, and we measure their happiness index. And the reason this is important, which I didn't get a chance to talk about last time, now looking back on it, is not because it's important to know. And that's important. Obviously, the number is immensely valuable, and we can talk about all the ways that HubSpot uses this one number. But the biggest value of Chi is its simplicity. The fact that it's a single number that ties to not profits. Profits would be great, right? You want financial numbers or whatever. But it's hard to hug a dollar, right? I mean, it's hard to get employees all riled up and say, yes, I want the P&L to go up by 7% next month or next quarter. Yes, they need to care at some point, and we're all in a positive way, red-blooded capitalists. But the nice thing about the Customer Happiness Index is we can look across groups and say, oh, by the way, here are the 60 sales reps. Here are the new people. Here are the ones that have been around for a while. And we measure the average Customer Happiness Index for every single sales rep. Like, OK, are you selling happy customers? If you're not selling happy customers, you're doing something wrong. Your job is to produce happy customers at the sales point, right, all the way through. We look at marketing channels. When we sell through an inbound lead gen through our blog, if we get a customer through that channel versus that channel, does that produce happier customers or less happy customers? We look at our support team. If someone talks to these 3 people versus those 3 people, are they more or less happier, essentially? And the idea is to have this single number that you can adjust over time, because what goes into the number changes probably like every 4 to 6 months. And for ours, it will probably be different for you, although, so the 3 that kind of it boiled down to for us was frequency of use. If they use the product every day, every week, they're more happy than if they're just not using the product every 2 months. Breadth of use. How much of the product are they using? Is it just one feature, or are they using 7 things? Sticky features, and this was the key one. This was the one I didn't talk about last year, is that there are certain features you will find that have an exceptionally high correlation to happiness. That says people that use this feature, even if they only log in once a week, they behave as if they're logging in 17 times a day. They have the same pattern, because there's something about that particular feature that causes them to stick. And the weird thing is, you won't know what that feature is. Your product management group won't know what that feature is. Your founder, you won't know until you actually sit down and measure it. You'll try and intuit it, but you won't really know. So my advice is, even if it's coarse, you're logging all this data anyway. Most of you are probably running subscription business, hosted software of some sort. Log all the data and try and measure and try and get better at it over time. It's a very iterative process. And it works wonders across the company. If I could just point back to one thing that says what made HubSpot tick, this is way, way, way high on the list. So I'd encourage you to do that. The other hack that we did, so in my first startup, we had this in all of our management meetings and founder meetings, we had an empty chair in the room. That was a designated chair for the customer. And we would literally pretend there was a customer in that chair when making decisions. And so it's like, okay, if we came up with something, as David was saying, it's like, oh, if the nickel stands right on its edge and you have to make a choice, how do you decide which way you're going to fall, right? Because we make these decisions all the time. They're non-trivial decisions. Do we raise prices? Do we lower prices? Do we do this feature or that feature? It's very helpful, as I found it very helpful in the first startup, to actually have that. It's like, oh, well, what if we had a customer here that was savvy, that we trusted, that let's say had a stake in the company, what would they say? What would their vote be? And so at HubSpot, we took this one step further. So we actually have a stuffed bear, and her name is Molly, because we have marketing personas called Marketing Mary and owner Ollie, and she's Molly. So she goes to all board meetings, all management meetings, and then any other meeting that someone wants to invite her, they can go. But she's required to hit quorum, essentially, for board meetings and management meetings. Not a meeting will go by, not a single one, where someone will not pause and say, that's bullshit. What would Molly say, essentially? And that works, because what ends up happening is if you think about it, it's going to sound cheesy, because it is. But it actually works. Like, you can have really smart people debate things for 2 hours, and it becomes crystal clear sometimes. It's like, well, yeah, there's nothing in it for the customer. Molly would vote no on this particular thing. And so if we're evenly split, let's go with the customer, right? So anyway, so that hack turns out that it works. It's a very simple thing to do. We like it. I'm not suggesting that you give customers some sort of veto right? That says they get to control everything that you do. You're in the software business. Part of the challenge that you deal with is that customers are often very, very good at identifying their problem, not necessarily good at identifying solutions to those problems. So anyway, I'm not suggesting that they have a veto right, but they, just like everybody else on your management team, they're going to be wrong. They're going to be opinionated. Pretend like they're actually there. What would they say? At least let them be heard. The other thing that we've learned is, so back, and I think most things now include batteries this day and age, but I grew up in a time where that was not the case. And so you would get a gift on Christmas Day, and you open it, and you're all excited, and the thing didn't have its batteries not included. And so you couldn't, that moment of happiness that was possible just doesn't happen. It's like, wow, crap, that kind of sucks. And I'm from India, and so we don't buy batteries. It's like, the answer in an Indian family is there are always batteries somewhere. We just have to look hard enough to find them. We don't buy new batteries, which defies the laws of physics because someone has to buy them at some point. But anyway, so my mom's answer is there are batteries in the house somewhere. Don't buy any more batteries. But the lesson here from a software business perspective goes into this notion of services. So I'm a deep down inside, however many layers you look, I'm a product guy. I just am. And there's a very simple reason for that. The margins are better, right? I can write a piece of software one time, sell it to 1,000, 10,000, 1 million people, and my cost of delivery is relatively low. You guys all get this, right? It's simple. That's why we don't like services. It's like if I had the choice between the two, I would sell product, because the margins are great. One thing we have learned is that I think services sometimes get a bad reputation. I'm going to give you some anecdotal evidence here. So let's assume right now that HubSpot is measuring, which we are, chi for customers, right? So we know what their happiness is. We don't have to wait for them to cancel. We can actually tell you with relatively good precision not only how many customers are going to cancel next month based on the patterns of usage of the software, but which ones they are, right? It's like, oh, you have a chi of 22. You don't know this yet, but you're unhappy, and you're going to cancel 14.2 days from now or something like that, right? It's, and so what we've learned, essentially, is that, so we have a services, so services represent 7% of HubSpot's revenue. We don't spend a lot of time, and it's a break-even unit within the company. So we don't try to make profits, and we don't try and lose money. We essentially solve it for break-even. But a very interesting thing happens when you look at services from a business perspective, a software business perspective. And here's what happened at HubSpot. So we're like, okay, well, we don't really like services all that much. It drives the margin down because on some portion of our business, even though it's relatively small, we make zero margin. And that kind of, if you average out into our gross margin for the entire company, goes down as a result of having some portion of our business that's 0%. As it turns out, that was the wrong way to look at it. And here's why. So the way we looked at it was, oh, well, we charge this much. We charge, I think it's $125 an hour for our services people, right? So we don't give away services for free, and they help train and onboard customers and bring them up to speed. And a customer will spend between 4 to 8 hours with a service person at HubSpot. It's paid support, essentially. And at first we thought, oh, it's a break-even business because we can look at the $125. We know what our fully loaded costs are. We know what the employee salaries are for the people that work in that team. And we're like, oh, it's break-even. As it turns out, it's not break-even. Because what it doesn't capture, oh, this is the revenue coming in the door, it does not capture or did not capture the increase in lifetime value. That says, because we did the research. We sat down and looked at our data and said, oh, we're going to spend a month or two where we don't provide any kind of onboarding services. Right? We've got all this documentation, we've got the software out there, let's see what happens. Because before, it's like every single customer that signed out at HubSpot would have some human help them for between 4 and 8 hours, and it was sold as part of the product. And so we retracted that for a little while to say, hey, let's see what happens if we don't have services. As it turns out, absence of services led to much unhappier customers. Well, that seems reasonable. It's like, OK, well, lots of people don't know what they're doing. This inbound marketing stuff is new. The product's not that easy, although we try. And as it turns out, so we measured the actual happiness index lift, which we know is correlated to churn, which we know how to calculate the economic value. So we know what every hour that we spend on services, we know the increase in lifetime value. That says these customers are now going to stay 7.2 months longer as a result of their increase in happiness, as a result of us having spent the time. We have the data. And so then we took it the other way. It's like, oh, we've been spending 4 hours per customer. What happens if we increase it to 8 hours? Are customers even happier? The answer is yes. Yet happier. More time we spend, it seems that they're even happier. And obviously, there is a limit to this. I'm not suggesting that you spend an entire lifetime with the customer. There's a point at which that system breaks. But the larger message here is that question the assumptions around people. Like, yeah, go ahead.
Is it so valuable you should do it for free?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is it so valuable you should do it for free?
We tried that too. We tried that, and yes and no. So we tried it, and we almost decided to do it. The question is it so valuable that you should just give it away for free because of the increase in lifetime value? The challenge that we found was that, so when we have these consulting sessions, we have 4-hour sessions that a very, very smart human on our end talks to the customer and gets them up to speed on marketing and the software and things like that. What we learned was our hit rate of actually scheduling time with the customer went down when it was free because they didn't value it. When they paid for it, if they paid $500 for 4 hours of consulting, by God, they were going to consume their 4 hours of consulting. So the way we look at it is that anything we can do to guarantee ourselves that they will actually take the benefit of the services, we're all for that. So we're happy, like there's a margin that we could actually lower prices or do something. But anyway, so it's worked very well for us. So by the way, I'm the type of person, I don't like humans all that much. If there was a way to build a multi-billion-dollar business out of my basement, not hire anybody ever, I would do that. As it turns out, that's really hard. I've tried. It's really, really hard. It takes people. So we'll talk. We're doing a bunch of things at HubSpot to kind of drive the kind of. So once you have this customer happiness index, by the way, then you can run lots and lots of different experiments. Lots of experiments, some of which we talked about. You can also say, well, what happens if we go to, instead of having this one-on-one consulting, what if we go to some online chat-based, video-based, content-based model? What impact does that have? And we can kind of calculate the it's like, oh, it's going to cost us $50,000 to produce this video or do this thing. And we can actually measure the true ROI because we know relatively quickly, within a week or two, what the impact was on happiness, which is, once again, correlated very, very well with lifetime value. The other thing I learned in the last year, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did you make that step? Did you go ahead and do the video, do the online?
Yes, yeah. So we have.
And what was the result?
Very positive. So it's interesting. I was dubious, by the way, on this particular experiment. I'm like, there's no way that humans are going to sit and watch something versus actually talking to a human. And we don't have the sample size not large enough to be for us to have confidence in it yet. But the early data suggests that the customer happiness index for those that go through that one-to-many process within one customer segment is actually marginally higher. And we are trying to dig into why that is because it makes no intuitive sense. It's like, why wouldn't you want to talk to a human if you could? But so far, it's positive. It's working out. Only within a certain segment, but it's working. So we're going to invest more there. The other thing that works is if you have unhappy, let's say you had this key and you knew exactly which customers are going to cancel, and you knew that if you can keep those customers, their lifetime value is, let's say, like in HubSpot's case, $20,000 to $30,000, call them and say, hey, I think you're unhappy. What can I do to make you more happy? And that is essentially the script. We have an entire team of people at HubSpot called customer success managers that do nothing but they run the report, they look at the bottom, like lowest key customers and call them and see if they can convert them. It's like, what can we do to make it like, it's clearly our fault. What do we do? What can we do to help, essentially? And we'll do things like give away another 4 hours. We'll do all sorts of stuff to make a customer happy because we know what the value is. And the question you would ask if I weren't talking so fast is, oh yeah, but those customers that you save, do they ultimately end up canceling anyway? The answer is, yeah, about a third-ish will eventually cancel because there's something like intrinsic about that relationship that just wasn't working, and just us calling them and saving them and making them happier sometimes was temporary, but in other cases it works, so it's still profitable. Yeah.
Does it not investing in the sales team make the experience, like if you have more customers and you get to be $1 billion corporation, like aren't ultimately the sales experience get worse because you'll have tons more customers?
It's a great question. So the question is, by not investing in the sales team, doesn't the overall experience get worse because you have fewer salespeople, and we have a very consultative, kind of friendly, I think, relatively friendly sales process. So my answer there is nothing at HubSpot or in any of your companies is forever. Everything is one grand experiment that we happen to be this far along in the process at the particular point in time. So our decision to stop hiring sales reps and invest it all in product will endure for at least 6 to 9 months. That's the current plan. And then we'll look at the numbers and say, okay, well, we have certain goals that we want to get to in terms of customer happiness and just like exit surveys, and we want to get to a certain churn rate, it's like cancellation rate. And once we get there, we're like, okay, now we feel like we've kind of tweaked the engine, the car is doing relatively well now, it's not shaking as much anymore, let's go faster and go back into kind of sales and marketing mode. So it's that balance, and it's like every quarter there's like a little thing that's like, oh yeah, we did this over here, and this broke over there, let's go fix that, and this is kind of iterative optimization process. So I fully expect that we'll go back into getting more salespeople and invest more in there. Yeah.
Why don't you do both at the same time?
Because we're geeky, and because we don't like multiple variables. We don't like 2 experiments at the same time that might impact each other, because we're so smart that then people pick whichever experiment and data that they like that kind of validates their thinking. And we like to point to it's like, okay, well, if this is the only thing we changed and life sucked, clearly there's got to be some correlation, right? It's not always definitive, but
Dharmesh, one of the things that you talked about early on was raising money and not do it. But as a HubSpot customer, I know that you guys do a lot of these tests. It seems that having that cash in the bank enables you to do these tests without worrying.
Yep.
And it's very difficult on a bootstrap to do these tests.
Yep.
What are your
yeah, so the question is, so HubSpot's got a bunch of cash in the bank, we've raised a bunch of capital, and doesn't that give us the opportunity to run more of these tests and do more of these experiments? And the answer is yes. That's one of the upsides to having capital. And it's hard as a bootstrap to run a lot of tests, right? Because you're looking for revenues, you're looking for customers. You can't say, well, we're going to turn off the revenue spigot for 2 months and see what happens, because we're curious. Let's see. As it turns out, employees don't like that sometimes. I've done that before in my prior startup. So yes, the cash does help there. So my message to you on the capital raising is that if you have relatively clear, precise visibility into your funnel, into your overall business process and what the economic drivers look like. For instance, we can tell you, here's how much we pay a sales rep. Here's the month that we will become cash flow break even because we know how much they sell, we know what the customers are worth, we know how they can. And as the data grows, we become increasingly confident. It's a very predictable business. So if you look at that curve, the sales curve that I showed you, the reason it's so smooth is not an accident, is because we solved for that curve. It's like, okay, we want revenue to be X next month, and the month after that, and the month after that, and we tweak the business to get to that curve. And so if you have a business where you know that pouring $1 into the business from a sales and marketing or whatever perspective yields $2, $3, $4 of lifetime value, raise money. Raise money just enough to run the experiments that you need to, because you should be pouring more water into that machine. You're producing cash. Investors love that. Investors love that. If you can put $1 in and get $3 out, that's a perfectly good reason to raise money, by the way. I'm an angel investor. I've done 14. I'm kidding. No. All right. And this actually, Kathy Sierra spoke a brilliant speech presentation last year in San Francisco. And one thing she said, which resonated with me because I think it happens to be true, is that we shouldn't think about being producers of X. We should be thinking about being producers of brilliant users of X. So in this, let's say it was HubSpot as the example. So I would say, HubSpot, we don't make marketing software. We make marketing superstars. Her example was if you're a digital camera person, You don't make the best digital camera, you make better photographers. And it seems squishy. It seems like, well, yeah, but don't we really just produce software and sell that? Yes, you do. But as it turns out, as a kind of motivating, aligning, sounds philosophical, it works. Because it's that kind of customer alignment thing. It's like if you're looking to, the software is the vehicle. And Seth said this, it's not about the code. The code is not the point. The customers are the point. The market is the point, essentially. It's like, what are you doing to produce better users of X? So we want to produce 1 million better marketers, essentially. That's our mission. That's what we want to do. Software is how we get there, but that's what we want to do. And that works. The other thing that we've learned is this notion of simple. So when we started the company, our kind of whole idea was to have this kind of simple, easy, and integrated platform for marketers because there were much better products than each of our individual. For instance, we have a content management system. WordPress is much better. We have an analytics tool. Google Analytics is much better. We have, for everything that HubSpot does, when we have like 19 apps or features, there are venture-backed, in some cases publicly traded, phenomenally successful, great companies doing just that. And you would think it is completely idiotic for any entrepreneur worth their salt to ever do something like that. Where it's like, why would you do that? Why would you have something that competes with WordPress and Google Analytics all together, of all things? And the answer is actually inspired by Apple. And Clayton Christensen from Harvard Business School writes about this a lot and talks about it a lot. But the idea is that if you're going after massive opportunities, you should not be trying to take market away from your competition. If the opportunity is big enough, there are enough non-consumers out there that you should be selling to. Look for the blue ocean. Pick your cliche or phrase of choice based on which business school book you read this or last year. But the concept is actually very, very simple. So what Apple did is, like when Apple released the iPod, they did not say, we're going to create the best MP3 device with the highest gigabytes of storage, with the best cost performance ratio, whatever. They said, we're going to go after the non-consuming mere mortals that are not enjoying digital music but should be. And they asked, and Apple's been brilliant at this for their most of their entire history, as long as Jobs was in charge, is around what do we have to do? Apple asked themselves the questions like, what do we have to do to get those millions of people that are sitting on the sidelines that should be enjoying digital music, because it's a better way to enjoy music? What do we do? What do we have to do to get them into the game? And as it turns out, more often than not, when you ask yourself the question, what do you have to do? The answer is not build a better X. The answer is build a simpler X. What's keeping people out is not some feature. What's keeping people out is because it's too hard to get into the game. So what Apple did is said, oh, we're going to build a simple device. We're going to have partnerships with the content producers. We're going to have this network, essentially, and we're going to have this way you can download songs, and we'll take over all the copyright, and we're going to do this, and it's going to allow millions of people to enjoy digital music. And so as you go back and you think about your businesses, I think there are, in just about every industry, there are always opportunities, blue oceans of unserved customers that should be enjoying whatever you have to offer, but aren't yet. And that's a much happier market to work in. It's frustrating sometimes, but it's a much, much happier market to work in. So I would suggest that you think about that as like, what can you do to simplify? And if you did that, like Southwest didn't go after people that were flying on Delta. There's all sorts of examples of great successful companies that essentially went after a broad, entirely new market and took new people and got them into consuming whatever it was that they were offering. All right. The other thing we've learned at HubSpot, this is a culture hack, is transparency. So we have this, I'm going to go on a short story. Is about a year ago, a little over a year ago, my co-founder and I were chatting, as we do every now and then. And so we said, okay, well, we're kind of growing. I think we're about 70, 80 people, and we should see whether the employees are happy or not. We do customer surveys all the time, but let's check in with the employees because we'd never done that before. We'd never asked anybody in the company, like, are you happy, essentially? And so we did. And we said, okay, well, let's go do the customer survey. The employee survey. Let's ask people. And we did a net promoter score, which is essentially 2 questions. Question number 1 is, on a scale of 1 to 10, would you recommend HubSpot to a colleague? Would you recommend that they work here? That's the question. And the question number 2 is why, which is the kind of qualitative, subjective side of it. So we learned 2 things. One is employees were happy. Like, they were exceptionally happy. And one of the things that bothered us, quite candidly, is that our employees were happier than our customers. Hence, this take dollars out of sales and marketing, put them into product, and create happier customers. But the employees were really happy, and the answer to the question of what made them happy, the answer was the other employees. It's like, I love the people that I work with. They're really, really smart, they care, all those kinds of things. Sounds cliched. And that's not the point of the story. The point of the story was, so then a little light bulb goes off with my co-founder and I. We're like, oh, we have a culture. That's the first time the word culture had ever been mentioned in the history of the company, ever. Like, it had never been spoken before. It's like, oh, we have a culture, and it sounds like it's pretty good. It's working. People like working here, and we're producing revenue. And our whole job, essentially, is to try and not screw it up. Like HubSpot's doing well, let's try and manage not to screw it up. And one of those ways not to screw it up is we've got this culture. We probably should try and do something to preserve it. And then so we look at each other like, well, what is it? We're like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. I've never dealt with this before, and he hadn't either. And since I'm the one that likes people the least, I was a designated person to figure it out in terms of employee culture and human interaction and kind of codify what the culture was. And so we went and asked people and figured out. One of the things, this has worked really well, and we're big on this one, is transparency. So we identified our cultural attributes. I'm not going to bore you with all of them. One of them is transparency. So it's on the list of things. And we are transparent to a fault, especially within the employee base. So every employee at HubSpot, and we use we use Atlassian, by the way. We have like 4,000 pages and tens of thousands of comments. Every day, every employee is on the wiki at HubSpot. But the information that's available on the wiki is how much capital we raised, what price we raised it at, what the strike price was, how much cash is in the bank, literally the bank balance in the company, how much money we burned last month, how long we will last, how long is the runway, down to, I mean, like literally, like everything is there. Everything we present to board meetings, all the things that investors know, every single employee up and down the chain knows that at HubSpot. The only thing we don't share, which we're trying, my co-founder, is salary information of the employees. Absent that, just about everything is open, or compensation more broadly. Yes?
Did that imply that employees needed to be instructed on not sharing that outside the company, or is that not particularly relevant?
We do say that.
Because essentially then everyone's like a board member, and it needs to have similar privacy.
Yeah. We like employees to use their discretion. So like the financial stuff, and we're not thinking like being a public company yet, so we actually share more stuff than we probably should, which is okay. We'll probably have to change that someday. But we haven't really worked. There's no like formal policy that says, look, here's the stuff you share, here's the stuff that you don't share, except I think the board meetings. There's something where I think like 5 years from now or something, like if we go public, they're going to, like the board meeting minutes go into the IPO docs or something like that. But I think other than that, most of it's relatively fair game, but they use their discretion. It's like, okay, if you think it'll help or whatever, it's germane to the conversation, it's okay. But that's been very helpful for us for a couple of reasons. One is, quote our VP of engineering has used in the past, which is light is the best disinfectant. As it turns out, management, broadly, including me, does much fewer stupider things when those stupid things are publicly accessible to everyone. Like really stupid stuff happens behind closed doors. You make all sorts of decisions, right? It's like, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to change, and we've tried this, by the way. And so you would think we'd learn by now. So my co-founder and I will put an article out there. It's like, we met the management team. We had this long all-day offsite or whatever, and here's what we're looking at or whatever. And we'll have like 8 pages of comments within 3 hours. So it's like that's the stupidest thing we've ever heard. Kind of comments, essentially. Clearly, they're good at holding back their opinion and care about their jobs, but.
Create a culture where people did that?
So I like to jokingly say when we initially introduced transparency as one of the things, it was because not being transparent, I call my co-founder lazy for not being able to like make stuff up. And transparency actually consumes much less calories because then you don't have to decide what do we disclose or not disclose, like just put it all out there, we'll work it out. So along the same lines in terms of culture, one of the hacks that we put in last year, which is controversial, so we had this meeting of the exec team at HubSpot, and we were, 80-ish people, and we didn't have a number of things at HubSpot. We don't have a director of HR, or anybody with the word HR or person or any kind of creative title. There's like nobody responsible for employee happiness at HubSpot. Yet we were voted best company to work for in Boston, beat Google this year. So something's working. But one of the things we did last year as a kind of culture hack was, so we had this meeting and our CFO comes to us and says, guys, one thing we need a vacation form and a system to track, nobody knows what their vacation, like do they get 2 weeks or 4 weeks, or how much can they roll over or not roll over, and like we need to just like define it. He's like, whatever it needs to be, just fine, we can keep it simple, whatever. And so we looked at each other and we're like, well, why do we need to do that? It's like, well, because employees join, they need to know what no. And so we decided our vacation policy at HubSpot, literally, is we have no vacation policy at HubSpot. We don't track it. Nobody approves it. You take the time you need, and that's it. And our hope is, in both directions, that people don't abuse the system. And so the common argument that comes back is, well, my God, that will never work because you're always going to have, there's a normal distribution curve of whatever. It's like, okay, if you've got people that you're worried are going to abuse a no vacation policy, you hired wrong. Fix it. Like if that ever, my hope is that doesn't happen, and my co-founder's kind of argument in support of this no vacation policy was, so if you look at who watches Mad Men? Mad Men, TV show. Great show. For those of you not, you're missing out. You should watch it. Go back to season 1, work your way through. It's a great show. So Mad Men said, I think in the 50s and 60s about Madison Avenue Firm. What's interesting, so we all watch Mad Men. It's obviously a little bit of a caricature of those times, but we watch it's like, my God, I can't believe they ran businesses that way. Like drinking vodka in the afternoon and like the mistreatment of women in the workforce and all sorts of just like stuff that would never, and we look back on it, it's like, my God, they were idiots, right? I mean, that was just stupid. How could they not have known? So the question we asked ourselves is, 10 years from now, if someone did a documentary on businesses as they were running them right now, what will people make fun of then? What are the things that we're doing now that are going to look idiotic 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Because we're hoping to build a business that outlasts us, essentially. That's the goal, that will be around after we're dead. And so we want people to point back and say, okay, well, at least they questioned it, if nothing else. And we still do stupid things, some of them deliberate and conscious. So anyway, so that was the Novik, and we're still alive, by the way. We're still making our revenue numbers. No one has abused it. I'm still standing. I still have a job. Yep. Question.
Going back to transparency.
Yep.
Why not go that one more step and just have it be public for non-employees or anything?
Very good question. Because we haven't been able to come up with what's the upside. So like on the employee transparency, I can pretty well argue why it's important for all the employees to know, essentially, what's going on, because it makes them better decision makers, they feel more bought in. I'm not sure that, just as a red-blooded capitalist, whether the upside of actually sharing it publicly is worth it. So we do take like our customer numbers, essentially our revenue numbers are out there. The fact that we're doing the sales, we have our big customer conference tomorrow, so we're pretty transparent, but just not to the same degree, yeah. But that might change, we'll see. All right, let's see, we're down to 8-ish minutes. We're doing pretty well. So let's talk about free a little bit. In terms of freemium, it's all the rage, especially in software businesses or whatever. And if you're doing a freemium model, by the way, one thing is like, don't forget the meum part. It's not just about the free. I want to just say one quick thing about freemium. HubSpot doesn't have a classic freemium model, but we have lots of free stuff, content, free tools, or whatever, but it's not the core product yet. But in talking to a bunch of entrepreneurs, which I do a fair amount, one of the things that troubles me is that too many people, like one of the traps that we fall into as business people is that once you have freemium, you have this, when you're making decisions, you start talking about these kind of triggers and traps, and it's like, what can I do to cause a higher percentage of people to move from free to paid? And that's a legitimate question to be asking. It's like, what can I do to make more money, right? It's like, oh, only 0.2% of our users are paid customers or whatever, and the industry average is 2.2%. How do we make that better? And that's okay. What's not okay, though, is the way in which you kind of frame those decisions. So it should not be like, where can I lay these little triggers, these little wires in the jungle that, like, oh, I was doing this, and now I tripped, and I'm now a paying customer. I have to be, right? It's like, so the idea is not to trick the user base. The idea is to create or kind of manufacture value in a way that your customer triumph results in them switching to whatever you want. And this applies to upgrades as well. And this is going to sound philosophical, but there's a big difference between laying little tripwires in the sand. It's like, aha, we got you. Like you were like at this, and now you're that, and you need this feature. And the company that I think is, and I love the company, by the way, love the company, Salesforce.com. Salesforce.com, brilliantly successful. My hope is you don't have to do this to be brilliantly successful. Remains to be seen. But they're diabolical about those traps and tripwires. So if you can start as a Salesforce customer paying $500 a year or something crazy like that, and then all of a sudden you wake up one day and there's this big ass nonlinear shift, and it's like, and they kind of sort of knew. It wasn't an accident, by the way, that you just happened, like as you were meandering through the woods of Salesforce usage, and then you fall over this one little thing, and now all of a sudden you're paying $20,000. It's just, it's crazy. So they're diabolical. My suggestion to you is you don't have to be that. You should be thoughtful in terms of where you know you're creating value and kind of associate the price the customer pays or the conversion to paid. So I'm not a brand guy, but I like this quote that I overheard I was at a conference at MIT of some sort, and it was at a table away from me, so I can't even attribute the source. But it's about brand is what people say about you after you leave the room, essentially. So what's your impression? That's like the layperson's attempt to describe brand. And where it helps is it makes everything else easier. Like Dropbox. So I asked Drew, by the way. So I had drinks. He was in town last week. He's one of 5 people that I will cancel dinner with my wife in order to have dinner with Drew from Dropbox. And my wife knows it, and she encourages it because she's a user, and she's like, well, ask him why they haven't built this feature yet. Why can't I do shared folders? Which I did, and they're coming, by the way, for the record. You didn't hear that from me, because I think that's still confidential. But so I asked Drew, and I'd asked him this before, which is, Drew, I totally get that the reason Dropbox is so phenomenally successful is the product, because he's told me this 100 times. It's like, it's the product. Dharmesh, it's the product, just product. Like, build a brilliant product, solve the problem, build the product. And so I asked him this time, because I'm slightly smarter now, and like, Drew, and I'm very crafty in the way I kind of structure this question. It's like, next to the product, what's the next most important thing that contributed to your success? And his answer was, and Scott's going to talk about this, I think, from Atlassian, is don't screw the customer. Like, that's it. It's like when we sit down and make decisions or whatever, Drew says, essentially, they do not make decisions in the company where the company benefits and the customer suffers. That's it. Like, don't do those things, essentially. So after product, get the product right. Then secondly, essentially solve for that customer happiness. That's going to sound squishy, but it works. It works anyway. So down the kind of meandering floss. How am I doing so far? Is it all right, everybody? Okay. I should have put an applause slide in if I was going to be that obvious about it. But okay, so the be a good egg thing is around what I call the kind of path of truth and justice. So at HubSpot, we believe that we are on the path of truth and justice because we believe in this inbound marketing and stopping spam and direct mail and killing trees and harming kittens and all those things. And it's true. So we really believe that we're actually making the world a better place. But I'm going to posit to you that today versus, let's say, 10, 15 years ago, or let's say in the 80s or 90s, if you were in the software business, it was sort of okay, not okay as in like ethically okay, but profitable to be somewhat evil. Like Oracle, a bunch of relatively successful software companies. My apologies to someone from Oracle's in the room, but the supremely successful software company, and it worked, right? And the reality is you had all sorts of kind of misbehaviors because the market didn't punish bad behavior that well because we didn't have an opportunity to. So you had like drive-by sales, essentially like, oh yeah, here's a $600,000 CRM implementation or whatever, that never saw the light of day, very aggressive sale, like lots of bad things. And my argument to you now is that if you're really looking to build the next multi-billion-dollar business, bad behavior gets talked about now, and it will crush you because of the internet. People will talk, like people can search on HubSpot sucks in 30 seconds and find out how many people think HubSpot sucks. You can't hide anymore. It's not, customers don't have to go to a conference to figure out, like, oh yeah, well, we tried that product from that company or whatever, and that kind of sucked. It's all open right now. So I think the red-blooded capitalist right thing to do is to put yourself on the path of truth and justice and solve something where you can say, well, I'm actually solving a problem, my customers are happy, I care about that, and my hope is that that leads to a multi-billion-dollar company someday, and my answer is that maximizes your odds. If it were me, that's what I would do.
What about Salesforce? I mean, that's a bunch of Oracle salesmen who are producing software filled with...
Yeah, so the question is, what about Salesforce? What about Salesforce? Of all the things that keep me up at night at HubSpot, high on my list of questions that keep me up at night at HubSpot is the what about Salesforce, not from a competitive perspective, but so if you look at the practices of Salesforce, I talked about their kind of pricing and it's relatively clever and diabolical or whatever. And I've met with at least half a dozen people from the original exec team at Salesforce. Sat down, talked to them, and it's like, oh yeah, look, what'd you guys do about this and that? And they're very transparent, as it turns out, very open company. But there's a bunch of stuff at Salesforce that I just fundamentally don't agree with in terms of corporate culture and aggressive sales tactics and all that kind of stuff or whatever. And they built a great product and built a big business. My hope is we don't necessarily have to, and I wish them all the success because they did a great damn job, laid the groundwork for a lot of us. But my hope is that the successful software businesses of the next 2 decades will be kinder, gentler, and more focused on customers. So I'm going to close on this note, which is as a former bootstrap self-funded entrepreneur, this is my 3rd one, and there's been lots of kind of discussion around, should we take venture capital, dream big, or whatever. My response to you is that dream big and execute small. And what I mean by that is that if you are starting a company, for those of you that are entrepreneurs in the room, this will not be, if this is your first one, it will not be your last. It's a genetic flaw. You're going to do it over and over again. And the way to think about this is that your big dream does not have to be embodied in your current company. Your aspirations, like for instance, it's completely okay to say, oh, I'm going to do this bootstrap startup. Someone is going to offer me $15, $20, $25 million. I'm going to take it. And there are lots of people that argue, it's like, oh, you didn't dream big enough and you should have held on and it was growing, and why not take the cash? Take the cash, and here's why. Is because the cash funds the next dream. And it's okay. It's like you will have plenty of ideas, I promise. Like your issue is not that you don't have ideas. Your issue is you have too many. And it's hard to tell the crappy ones from the potentially good ones, or the great ones. So I'm going to close, take a breath, and I'll take a couple of questions until Neil pulls me off the stage. So thanks for your time, by the way. This is always fun. Okay, 2 questions. Yes?
So you said you call customers when their chi is low to ask why they're unhappy. How does that then feed back if you give them like free stuff or a discount or whatever? How does that feed back in that number? What sort of system do you have?
Okay, so the question is, so we have this customer success group essentially that calls customers that are low chi. So we track the data. So we're very, we've got 18 people out of MIT in the team, we're very data geeky. So everything that happens, essentially, we try and capture. So we know which customers, so we can analyze churn and things like that. So we know that, okay, the happiness of someone that we kind of re-happified, re-delighted, even though they weren't, has this kind of behavioral pattern. So we just measure it. And so it's still profitable, which is why we still do it. That team is still growing because dollar in produces more than dollar out. It's a good thing for us to do. But it's not as good as we thought it was because there are some intrinsic issues. Like there are some customers that just don't fit the profile. It's like no matter what we do, we are not going to, there's a reason they're unhappy, and some of it's us, and we can fix those things, but that's not the majority of the reason. So we have about a 1/3-ish of them that we can save, but it doesn't pan out. Like they will be unhappy again in 6 months or something like that. So, and we're trying to figure out now from a demographic perspective, what's the profile? What do those customers look like that even though they have a low chi, they're not worth trying to save, essentially, because we're just not the right fit. That's what it comes down to. Right? Way back there. I'm going to have to come up here because I can't hear.
You put up the average revenue per user and multiply that by expected lifetime value or lifetime.
Yeah.
Why would it not be the average profit?
It would be and should be. So the question is, why talk about average revenue per user, not average profit per lifetime, or lifetime profit versus lifetime value? And we do. The issue is that, so I talk at a lot of startup events or whatever, just the fact that I can talk about revenue in year one of us, like a web-based startup or whatever, is apocryphal, some word that's bad, essentially. Idiotic, that's a simpler word. I should stick with small 2-syllable words, or 3-syllable words. So the answer is, you should definitely look, if you can, look at lifetime profit, right? Because then you can factor in cost of goods sold. It's like, okay, well, here's what goes into it. So that's the ideal number that you should be measuring. We use proxies for that, right? And the revenue is good enough for us. We're not profitable yet. We'll be next year. But yeah. And the other thing, in a software company, the cost of goods sold ends up being not that big a piece of the equation overall. So it's a relatively good proxy to solve for revenue as long as you're not doing insanely stupid things. But all right. Question number 2. Yes. What did I do? I'm sorry.
That's question number 3.
Oh, is that question? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm done. Thank you very much for your time.